Thank you very much for coming. I'm going to ask David Otto to give his welcome remarks. David?
So without much ado, I would do a presentation which is about the outcome of the day. The outcome of today is about knowledge. What kind of knowledge? And this is what I want each and every one of us to get out with today. What kind of knowledge do you want to obtain? So the more knowledge you have, of course, the more you can take responsibility. And the more you can take responsibility, the more you can have the situation under control. Most of you would understand terrorism and counter-terrorism is about engaging different departments. You have anti-terrorism strategies, counter-terrorism strategies, response, trainings, and all that we do. We do protection again. So it's important. The reason why we do that is because it gives you as the client the opportunity to be able to determine your threats. So it's very important for you to know that. Now, today we're talking about the Islamic State. But what we've noticed is that Al-Qaeda itself is the mother of Daesh. And that is why we're looking at not just Al-Qaeda or Daesh, we're looking at what happens in future, what other groups will come up in future if, for example, Daesh disappears today. Right now, the caliphate has collapsed. But what is more important for us is the physical caliphate has collapsed, but what happens to the ideology, what happens to the children that, have been raised in the Islamic State, what happens to the wives of the fighters, what happens to the fighters themselves. So this is what we're going to be looking at in the workshops.
But every country, even the best equipped and wealthiest countries, are going to face challenges with this. The United States, this is not a simple task for us. How do you de-radicalize people? How do you integrate the innocents? Minor children born into this situation, inculcated with values that are anathema to much of the world, that's going to be a challenge reintegrating these folks into society. And you can't simply morally leave them on their own. These children are born into this. And even some of those who went off to be ISIS brides or war brides, many young women were manipulated and misled and got themselves into something they didn't realize. That said, some of those who were manipulated and misled then became quite devout and serious supporters of Daesh. So it's a challenge. And how do you deal with this? You can't simply lock everybody up. We don't have that much space at Guantanamo Bay. It just doesn't exist. And that's not obviously the best solution for people. You want the humane solution. You want to be able to reintegrate people. You also don't want to leave the opportunity for these folks to be inspiration or to be malcontents and stick to some beliefs that they've had in the past and not reintegrate in society. President Trump famously sent a tweet out, and I'll just, if you allow me, I'll read his tweet just a few months ago. His tweets are always quite famous, so the United States is asking Britain, France, Germany, and other European allies to take back over 800 ISIS fighters that we captured in Syria and put them on trial.
According to our Nigerian police chief, he actually just released this a few weeks ago, about 2-3 weeks ago, and he said there were 203 crime-related deaths and 281 kidnappings just in the first 3 months of 2019 alone. We've been seeing a major increase in abduction and kidnapping. And it's weird because the other West African countries feel like, well, Nigeria, you guys have your little problem, just stay in that box. Unfortunately, it never really just stays in our box. We enjoy spreading the love. And so we now have cases in Ghana where they're now also experiencing kidnapping, because what happens is you see people who hear about what's going on, they see the lifestyle of these groups or gangs or young men who are doing these things, and then the copycat syndrome then comes in. So why the increase? We know about all these different things, but these ones kind of stand out a little bit more. The increasing youth population, no one's really doing anything about it. I'll share a little bit more about that as we go forward. Climate change is affecting things, not necessarily, well, in all sorts of aspects, but mostly with regards to displacement and with regards to seeing more and more activity of the people who would roam and graze cattle coming further down, and it's causing a lot of ethnic clashes, ethnic conflicts, the farmer herders crisis. Of course, there's a crime-terror nexus, and I'll show you a few more things as well, because if you're doing kidnapping, who are the guys who are conducting kidnapping? How much are they getting ransom? What are they using that ransom money for? Weapons, funding the different groups, etc. Of course, poverty, poor governance, all the same thing.
If we are still focused on a particular kind of understanding with the knowledge and the understanding we have, then we've got to have a challenge on our hand, because if we thought that Daesh was a challenge on a global level, then I'm afraid to tell you, well, some of you should know, that the threat that Daesh, IAQ, or Boko Haram inspired or connected groups are going to put to us in the coming weeks, months, and years ahead then we need to really get to know our adversary.
Educational failure is chronic, even in this country. We're supposed to be the 5th strongest economy in the world, and our education system is failing, especially those of certain class and colour. Political failure. The politics in the area that you live is not seen to be for everyone, and it's only for a certain elite few. You got, again, another recipe. Even over here, can I mention the B word? Does anyone know what the B word is? Brexit. You know Brexit, right? Even in Nigeria, I'm sure you've heard of Brexit. Do you know the way it's increased hate crime is absolutely significant, because they learn it from the politicians. The amount of hate speak from politicians, and not, they're supposed to have, polite discourse. I've never heard so much hate speak in such a long time.
Currently, myself and Hanif are working in Africa, in Chad and Mali, to try and build trust, get the government to understand how they can work with, religious organisations, with civil society, but also with NGOs and charities. A lot of distrust around groups such as the UN, OSCE, these big multinational agencies coming in and doing this sort of thing. So it's about managing those. So again, the workshop will be about risk assessment. It's going to be about programs, going to give you examples of how to do that. Myself and Hanif will talk about cases we've worked with, people coming through the prison system, coming out into the community. We'll also touch upon preventative work. I worked for the Home Office in the UK on one of the strands of contests that David mentioned on, called Prevent. I was a Prevent lead in West London. And we ran programs that intervened, particularly with young people of school age, university age, who were beginning to take on the identity of extremism, beginning to look at things online, beginning to listen to political or religious speeches that maybe they shouldn't be listening to. But how we intervened with that, rather than just telling people they can't do things, how do you actually get them to build a capacity internally to realise that they can question these things? Actually, they don't have to take things on face value. So it's about preventative work as well.
Young people felt betrayed. Young people who migrated already to the arena of peaceful means felt betrayed. By who? By democratic countries. Tell me about terrorism. I know some peaceful or peaceful activists, very peaceful, pro-democracy activists who joined Daesh already, and they died in Syria. I know some people. So the issue is, we really need to deal with the root causes. If we don't deal with the root causes, there will be worse than Daesh. Daesh have made Al-Qaeda a moderate organization. Can you imagine that?
Yes, from 1990 to 1999, I was a member of the House of Lords. And since then, I've been working in PR and public affairs. But for the past 5 years, I have been organising human rights education for speakers of Middle Eastern languages in the UK. Peaceful Planet Human Rights Education is an international non-profit organisation which I founded and run. I am absolutely convinced that human rights education can provide a very important component. And I think that it in the right context, it can be used to educate the ISIS fighters into democratic values. But the way we do it is not just a question of book learning, it's a question of heart learning. And we are getting cognitive and behavioral change in the people who come to our workshops. In other words, they are becoming more tolerant, more democratic, they handle situations, they handle people differently. And in fact, one young chap from Iran said that he was having a terrible time with his mother and his sister and his girlfriend, but from the workshops he'd realized that he'd been really macho and controlling, and in fact he said, "I've been treating my family like property."
If the people see that there is an imam in the prison, they will come to ask questions after that. Personal questions, religious questions, political questions, any kind of questions. And if we don't send any imam there, they will ask other people, and they will possibly ask that people that have been trained in Syria, in Afghanistan, and manipulated, brainwashed or brain polluted over there. And they will teach them the Islam. And many people who come to prison, they want to change their life. They want to be better, to become better, and to be a very good Muslim. And how you can be a very good Muslim, they have to find out. And if the people tell them that they can give their whole life, their own life, their whole money.
Okay, I am Major General U.S. Mohammed, the Chief of Civil Military Affairs, Nigerian Army Headquarters. So I'm here to represent the Chief of Army Staff, Lt.Gen General TY Buratai. So I have a dilemma here because considering the part and other presenters have been making their submissions, I am representing my principal, so I have to stick to his script so that I don't take him out of context. So let me just say I am most honored and highly delighted to stand before this great gathering of key stakeholders on security at the first annual anti-terrorism, counter-terrorism, and opening conference of the practitioners' workshop sessions organized by the Anti-Terrorism Accreditation Board and Global Risk International UK. I wish to commend the organizers and other executives for organizing this conference. To this end, the selected topic of my discourse, which is Nigeria's unique counterinsurgency, a working counterterrorism model for replication in Africa, is, in my view, is apt and carefully selected to reflect the current challenges of insecurity in my country. My address is expected to fashion a kind of unique strategic model for adoption and replication in Africa. It is worthy of note that the Nigerian Army has been a key player in the management of national and international security, more especially in Nigeria, despite some obvious challenges. Nevertheless, let me quickly point out that pure military engagements cannot provide sustainable solutions to these new threats, given the nature of their complexity and root causes, which call for a comprehensive approach that requires the military to have an excellent understanding of asymmetric security challenges. This is necessary if the military is to continue to play its role in countering and managing these threats in the most professional way. This is because of our experience in dealing with recalcitrant group like the Boko Haram terrorists, which shows that dealing with such groups using the old method of stick then carrot as against the previously known carrot and stick approach is most helpful.